Clara Reynolds sat in the hushed courtroom, her back straight and her chin slightly lifted, as though invisible threads held her in place. To anyone watching, she looked calm, almost regal. Yet inside, her heart thundered, and a storm raged so fiercely she could hardly breathe. Just a few feet away sat Thomas Reynolds, her husband in name only, soon to be stripped of even that title. His posture was smug, his smile faint, as if he still believed the outcome was his to control. Beside him was Julia Carter, his mistress, a young woman whose hand rested protectively on the small curve of her pregnant belly. Julia's expression was one of triumph, though her eyes flickered nervously each time they met Clara's unwavering gaze. The room buzzed with the sounds of a courthouse in motion. Lawyers shuffling papers, the bailiff calling names, pens scratching across notepads. Yet despite the noise, there was a tension that pulled every sound taut, like the strings of a violin tuned too tight. Something was about to snap. Then Clara rose. Her chair slid softly against the floor as she stood, her voice slicing through the stillness with precision. "Your Honor," she began, her tone calm but unshakable. "Before we proceed, I would like to call one more witness." Thomas's head snapped toward her, his confident smile faltering for the first time. Julia stiffened beside him, clutching at her stomach as if she could shield both herself and the unborn child from what was coming. The double doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. The sharp rhythm of heels echoed down the aisle. Each step rang out like the toll of a bell, a countdown marking the unraveling of Thomas's composure. Every head turned. The witness entered. And in that moment, the color drained from Thomas's face. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. He had never expected her. Not now, not here, not when he thought victory was already his. Clara didn't even glance at him. She didn't need to. Her eyes stayed locked on the judge, steady and resolute. Inside, however, her heart pounded with a clarity she had never known. This wasn't about fear anymore. It wasn't even about pain. This moment was about truth, about dignity, about being heard after months of silence. And for Clara Reynolds, the story was only beginning. 2 months earlier, Clara's life had appeared almost enviable. At 35, she worked part-time as a translator, balancing deadlines with raising 2 children, Sophie, 8, and Caleb, 4. Their suburban home just outside Denver painted the picture of a stable, happy family. The backyard was littered with toys and bicycles, the driveway decorated with chalk drawings in bright pinks and yellows. Neighbors often told Clara how lucky she was. From the outside, it was the sort of life people quietly envied. Her days were busy, but predictable. She woke early to make breakfast, packed lunches with care, rushed Sophie to school, calmed Caleb during toddler tantrums, and squeezed translation assignments into the quiet hours of the night once both children were asleep. It wasn't glamorous, but it was purposeful. Clara managed the household like a silent engine. Groceries, bills, doctor's visits, bedtime stories. Every detail, every chore, every responsibility rested on her shoulders, and she carried it willingly because she loved her children, and she believed her husband respected the life they had built. Thomas, on the surface, seemed like a good man. A department head at a well-known tech firm, he dressed sharply, spoke politely, and smiled often. He sometimes brought her flowers, sometimes told her she was the glue that held the family together. When they argued, he was quick to apologize, assuring her that she mattered more than anything. Clara believed him. Until the Tuesday that changed everything. It had been an ordinary afternoon. Clara had dropped off paperwork at a notary's office and was driving home. As she passed Thomas's workplace, she slowed. A simple instinct. A fleeting desire to wave if she happened to spot him outside. And she did. Thomas stood near the building, his hands in his pockets, looking relaxed. For a split second, Clara felt a flicker of warmth. Then another figure appeared, a woman. Tall, confident, dressed in a fitted black coat, her heels clicking against the pavement like punctuation. Without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed Thomas on the mouth. Not nervously, not shyly, but with the casual ease of habit. Clara froze at the wheel. Her breath hitched, Her pulse roared in her ears. Thomas smiled, sliding an arm around the woman's waist, guiding her toward his car with a familiarity that pierced through Clara's chest like a blade. They drove away together, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Clara sat frozen. The world outside blurred. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white. Was this real? How long had it been happening? How had she missed it? Her phone buzzed with a reminder. Sophie's school pickup was in 20 minutes. Clara blinked, pushing the tears back. She didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Not yet. That evening, when the children were asleep, Clara walked into the kitchen. Thomas sat at the table, scrolling casually through his phone. A plate of reheated lasagna sat in front of him. He looked up, smiling as though the day had been perfectly ordinary. "Hey, love. You okay?" he asked, reaching out for her hand. Clara stepped back, her voice steady though her chest burned. "Thomas, is there something you want to tell me?" He frowned. "About what?" "I saw you today. Outside your office, I saw the kiss. Who is she?" Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Thomas set down his fork. His smile slipped away. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "So it's true," Clara whispered. "Yes, her name's Julia. She's a colleague. We've been seeing each other." Clara's stomach dropped, her throat tightening. "And you didn't think your wife, the mother of your children, deserved to know?" "I didn't want to hurt you," Thomas said, running a hand through his hair. "But I can't leave her either." Her voice rose, shaking with fury. "What does that mean? That you live a double life? That I cook dinner, raise our kids, while she gets your lunch breaks in hotel rooms?" "I don't want a divorce," he insisted. "The kids need stability." "No!" Clara snapped. "They need a father who doesn't betray their mother." His eyes hardened, his voice flat. "Julia's pregnant." The words hit her like a physical blow. The room spun. Clara gripped the edge of the counter, her knees weak. "You cheated. She's pregnant, and you expect me to pretend nothing happened?" "I'm sorry," Thomas muttered. "But I can't leave her. I won't." Clara's breath shook, but her voice cut like steel. "Then you've made this easy. Tomorrow morning I file for divorce." His jaw clenched. "Do that and you'll regret it. I'll take the kids, the house. You won't walk away with much. Think about it carefully, Clara." Her eyes narrowed, fire burning through the pain. "Don't threaten me. Try to take my children, and you'll see exactly what I'm capable of." She turned and walked out, tears stinging her eyes but her spine unyielding. Something inside her had cracked, and it was never going to heal the same way again. The next morning dawned gray and quiet. Thomas had left before sunrise. There was no note on the counter, no coffee mug in the sink, not even the faintest trace of his presence. Just silence. Clara moved through the routine as if on autopilot. She brushed Sophie's hair, helped Caleb into his sneakers, packed a lunchbox with carrot sticks and crackers. She smiled when her children looked at her, though her heart felt like it was being held together with string. The numbness didn't last. That afternoon, the sound of the front door swinging open jolted her from her daze. Thomas was home, hours earlier than usual, but he wasn't alone. Julia stepped in behind him, her coat draped casually over her arm, her rounded belly outlined by a fitted sweater. She walked in as though she owned the place. Clara froze at the bottom of the stairs. What is she doing here? Thomas didn't answer. He strode into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, pouring himself a drink as if nothing was unusual. Julia's eyes swept the room. She smiled when she saw the plate of pancakes Clara had made earlier for the children. Without hesitation, she picked one up and took a bite. "This house smells amazing," Julia said lightly. "You're such a good cook, Clara. I might keep this recipe for myself." Clara's body trembled. Her voice came out sharp, cracking with disbelief. "You think this is a joke? You are standing in my house, the house where my children live." Julia met her gaze coolly, chewing slowly before replying. "Soon it won't be yours." Thomas and I are getting married. He's filing for full custody. You're not fit to raise them alone." The words sliced through Clara like knives. Her eyes snapped to Thomas. "Tell me she's lying," she demanded, her voice breaking. Thomas's jaw tightened. He kept his eyes on the glass in his hand. "I told you, Clara. You shouldn't have filed for divorce. You forced this. You walked away." "No," Clara choked out, her voice trembling with both fury and grief. "You cheated. You lied. And now you're trying to erase me." Julia leaned against the counter, a smug smile tugging at her lips. "We'll make this home ours. A real family." For a moment, the world around Clara seemed to still. Her breath slowed. Her vision blurred. Rage, despair, and disbelief tangled inside her chest. But then something shifted. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. Instead, she turned and walked upstairs, her steps steady, though her knees shook. In Sophie's room, she knelt by her daughter. "Sweetheart," Clara whispered, her voice soft but urgent. "We're going to take a little trip. Just a few days. Pack a few things, your favorite pajamas, your school bag, and one toy." Sophie's brow furrowed. "Why? Where are we going?" "Someplace safe," Clara said, forcing a smile. "I'll explain later." She moved to Caleb's room, helping him gather his dinosaur and a pair of sneakers. Her hands shook as she pulled important documents from the drawer. Birth certificates, passports, her laptop, and a small envelope of emergency cash she had kept hidden. Within half an hour, the children were strapped into the back seat of her car. Sophie stared silently out the window, confusion clouding her face. Caleb hugged his toy dinosaur to his chest, too young to fully understand. Clara started the engine, her hands gripping the wheel until her knuckles turned white. She pulled out of the driveway, her eyes fixed forward. She didn't look back. She drove aimlessly for a while, her mind racing faster than the car. Gas station lights blurred in her vision. She pulled into a corner lot, parking beneath the yellow glow of a flickering street lamp. "Here," she said softly, handing snacks back to the children. "Eat something." While they munched quietly, Clara opened her phone with trembling fingers and searched. Apartment listings, short-term rentals, anything within reach of Sophie's, school and Caleb's daycare, and then she saw, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in an aging brick complex near a small park. Affordable, available, immediately. Clara dialed the number. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Hi, I'm looking to rent your unit. It's for me and my 2 children. Can we meet soon?" "Yes, in 40 minutes. When she arrived, the building looked worn but cared for. The shutters were faded, the hedges overgrown, but the front steps were swept clean. The landlord, Greg, a kind-eyed man in his 50s, greeted her. He didn't ask questions, just handed her the keys and showed her the unit. It was small. A narrow kitchen, 2 cramped bedrooms, thin carpet that smelled faintly of detergent, but it was clean. Safe. Clara looked around, breathing in the stillness. "We'll take it," she said firmly. That night, Sophie lay in bed with wide eyes. "Mom," she whispered. "Why aren't we going home?" Clara knelt by her side, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "This is our home for now, sweetheart. Just for a little while, a place that's peaceful. You'll see." When both children finally drifted to sleep, Clara sat on her own bed in the dark. The room was unfamiliar, the ceiling blank. But for the first time in days, she felt something stir beneath the fear. Resolve. Thomas might think he could take everything from her. Julia might believe she could replace her, but Clara knew one thing with unshakable certainty. She wasn't finished fighting. The morning after she secured the apartment, Clara sat in a small cafe, hands trembling as she wrapped them around a warm mug of coffee. Caleb played in a corner with toy blocks the cafe kept for children, while Clara stared at her laptop screen, her mind fogged with exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tasha, her oldest friend. "Call Michael Harrington. Family lawyer. He's tough but fair. and he won't let anyone steamroll you. Clara dialed immediately. "Mr. Harrington, my name is Clara Reynolds. I need help. It's urgent." Later that afternoon, Michael walked into the cafe. Tall, composed, with a quiet confidence that made Clara exhale for the first time in days. He wore a blue shirt with rolled sleeves and carried a leather-bound notebook. He greeted Caleb kindly before turning to Clara. "Tell me everything," he said. His voice was calm, steady, not rushed. Clara poured it all out, the affair, Julia, the pregnancy, the threats, the night she fled with her children, and the small apartment that now felt like both refuge and exile. Her voice cracked only once, when she described Julia eating pancakes in her kitchen as if she already owned the place. Michael listened without interrupting, jotting down notes. When she finished, her hands clenched together, he leaned forward. "Clara, you're the children's anchor. Courts value that. They don't just hand kids over to the parent who earns more. Document everything, and I mean everything. Keep receipts, save texts, write down when you pack lunches, when you take them to school, when you stay up at night with them. Every detail matters." Clara nodded, relief flooding her chest. She finally had a strategy. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara became meticulous. She kept a notebook filled with daily entries, breakfast menus, homework sessions, Sophie's spelling tests, Caleb's doctor visits. She kept receipts for groceries, daycare fees, utilities. She printed emails and texts, highlighting every message where Thomas was absent or dismissive. Meanwhile, Thomas struck back. His lawyer filed a counterclaim, requesting full custody and sole ownership of the house. The papers accused Clara of being unstable, financially dependent, and emotionally unfit. Reading those words made Clara's stomach twist, but she held her head high. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was preparing to fight. Julia, on the other hand, began to unravel. At first she had been smug, confident, proud of her place beside Thomas. But pregnancy weighed heavily on her. Whispers from friends cut deep, and sleepless nights filled her with doubt. She watched Thomas grow angrier and more bitter with each passing day. He spent hours on the phone with his lawyer, spinning lies about Clara, boasting that he would win it all. But in the quiet moments, Julia wondered if she had made a mistake. She hadn't expected the storm that came with stealing a husband. The second hearing arrived. The courtroom was full, the tension thicker than before. Clara sat at the table beside Michael, clutching her notebook like a shield. Across from her, Thomas leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression smug once again. Julia sat rigidly, her face pale. The judge called for proceedings. Thomas's lawyer spoke first, painting Clara as unreliable, claiming she had abandoned the marital home and lacked the financial stability to provide for the children. Each word stung, but Clara held her breath and waited. Then Michael rose, calm, controlled. His voice carried authority without aggression. "Your Honor," he said, "we would like to call a witness." The doors opened. Heels echoed once again. When Clara saw who entered, her breath caught. Thomas's mother. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, color draining from his face. Julia's eyes widened in disbelief. The older woman walked steadily to the witness stand, her gaze firm, her voice unwavering. She testified to Clara's devotion, the countless hours with the children, the sacrifices she made, the steadiness of her care. She admitted that she hadn't even known about Julia until Clara told her. She revealed that Thomas had been seeing Julia for nearly a year and had lied to everyone, including his own parents. The judge's frown deepened with each revelation. Murmurs swept the courtroom. Julia lowered her head, as though wishing she could disappear. Clara sat motionless, but inside, her chest pulsed with relief. For the first time, the truth wasn't just hers to carry. It was spoken aloud, undeniable. For once, Thomas had no words. 3 weeks later, Clara sat on a wooden bench outside the courtroom, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She had gathered every piece of evidence, endured cross-examinations, listened to accusations designed to break her spirit. Now there was nothing left but the judge's decision. When her name was called, she rose. Her knees trembled, but her back stayed straight. She stepped into the courtroom one final time, her chest heavy with anticipation. The judge's voice filled the silence. Each word was deliberate, unhurried, and irreversible. Primary custody of Sophie and Caleb will remain with their mother, Clara Reynolds. A breath she hadn't realized she was holding escaped her lungs. Visitation rights will be granted to Thomas Reynolds, alternate weekends, supervised at the court's discretion. Clara's heart hammered as she gripped the table. The marital home will be sold. Proceeds will be divided equally. The petition for full custody and sole property ownership filed by Mr. Reynolds is denied. The gavel struck. The echo reverberated like thunder. Clara closed her eyes, a wave of relief washing over her. Not triumph, not gloating, but release. She had fought, and she had won. Thomas sat rigid, his expression blank. Julia was nowhere to be seen. Weeks later, Clara would hear whispers that Julia had left him. "I'm not cut out for this," she reportedly confessed, retreating from the mess she had helped create. Thomas moved into a small condo on the far side of the city. His visits with the children were infrequent, mechanical. The man who once promised Clara forever now appeared at her door as a stranger, holding gifts to mask absence, his eyes dulled by regret and pride. Clara, meanwhile, began to rebuild. The small apartment became a sanctuary. She replaced the faded curtains with fabric she chose herself. She painted the walls a soft, welcoming beige. Sophie helped her assemble a bookshelf, proudly stacking it with her favorite novels. Caleb planted herbs on the windowsill, his little hands patting down the soil. The smell of basil and rosemary soon mingled with the warmth of home-cooked meals. Every corner of that apartment bore Clara's touch. Her children's laughter, their shared resilience. At night, when the city lights flickered outside the window, Clara would sip tea and remember. Sometimes her mind wandered back to the old house, the garden where Caleb took his first steps, the hallway where Sophie taped her finger paintings. But she no longer longed for it. That house had been built on lies. This one, small, imperfect but honest, was built on truth. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was a beginning. People often asked Clara where she found the strength to walk away. Her answer was simple. I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified, hollow, broken. But the thought of raising my children in a home built on deceit, of teaching my daughter to tolerate betrayal, of teaching my son that disrespect was normal, that terrified me more. That was what gave me courage. I didn't leave because I stopped loving. I left because I remembered to love myself, too. To anyone listening, if you are stuck in something quietly breaking you, don't wait for the collapse. You don't need the whole world to validate your pain. You don't need perfection. You only need honesty with yourself. Walking away is not weakness. It is courage disguised as surrender, and sometimes the quietest revenge is simply living well. Share your story in the comments below, or offer encouragement to someone else who is finding their way out. Like this video if you believe in healing and resilience. Subscribe for more stories, real, raw, and told with heart. Because here we tell the truth. And the truth always rises.